Story 1. Trump keeps doing things that fall under the Federal Bureau of Investigation's textbook definition of domestic terrorism, and this grand old party is empowering him. Story 2. If it owns the libraries, we are all for it. That is literally all they care about. Story 3. He does not need to formally take over the United States. In fact, it takes a lot of resources to directly control a country. He already has the leadership of our country acting like vassals to him. This is really pathetic on our part. Our country is substantially stronger in almost every way than Russia. Story 4. I am certain that is what he has already done. If Vladimir Putin controls our government, and our government is authoritarian and run by a single political party, that is a takeover. It is done. He did it. This is where we live now. Congratulations, Donald Trump voters. This is what you voted for 3 times. Story 5. Make America Great Again would love it or deny it depending on the particular strain of stupidity they have. Story 6. He cannot take over the United States. He cannot even take over Ukraine. However, he can undermine the United States. Story 7. Whoever manages to take over from Donald Trump will have a solid case for massive gun control laws because I thought that the Second Amendment was to protect the country from something like a dictatorship. Yet unidentified men are picking up American citizens and putting them in camps to deport them, and no politician in the government is doing anything about it. If you are not going to use it when you need it, what is the point of it? Story 8. What do you mean if it turned out? That is what is happening. Story 9. He would not want to take over the United States. He wants to balkanize it. This is the reason why California exit is a thing, and why the term national divorce has entered the lexicon. He just wants the United States to become destabilized so it can set an example to the rest of the world about the value of democracy, so that other countries will abandon freedom. Story 10. I have thought that for some time after he started firing all the government and military staff that protect our country. Story 11. We are already there, and many uninformed individuals who voted for him do not realize it. Story 12. Everyone with any sense knows that neither Vladimir Putin nor Donald Trump has the best interests of the United States at heart. Story 13. The entire Republican Party and Fox News would say how it is great. Story 14. Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson are both aligned with Vladimir Putin. He is already working on his takeover. Donald Trump gave the war criminal a red carpet entrance. Story 15. Now that is funny. You all need some external perspective. Story 16. If he was serious about taking over the United States, he would do it like he did with the United Kingdom. Let a group of oligarchs come here thinking they are escaping the Federal Security Service. Let either them or their sons get into federal office, then start extorting them. Bonus points if a group of Moscow-loyal billionaires acquire majority stakes in the various defense contractors. Story 17. You mean the nation with the world's strongest military and a political party that boasts about patriotism? The country that was taken down not by force but by social media propaganda. Story 18. Russia has been engaged in an information war with the United States since 2016. They have teams of people in buildings trying to influence American opinions. This contributed to the rise of the Make America Great Again movement. Story 19. I fully expected Donald Trump to form a new alliance with Vladimir Putin and the Chinese Communist Party. Story 20. He is clearly using Donald Trump to weaken the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and Western alliances that have been in place for 80 years. Could not be more obvious. 30% of Americans think this is great. 40% think it is horrible. Another 30% do not know or care about any of it because they do not read, do not vote, and do not pay attention to what their government is doing. Story 21. People who support Donald Trump and are part of his following would, and evidently do, welcome it. Anyone with any sense would be angry but not surprised. Story 22. Basically the same as I do right now because you are just describing reality. Story 23. Russia appears to be in a difficult situation now, so what would be the point? Not trying to be offensive, just curious. He is having to use prisoners and Korean troops to fight now. Story 24. It seems that 51% of this country would vote for that to happen, so I guess we will just see how it all turns out. Clearly, I am no longer in the majority, so there is not much I can do about it. Maybe another protest or petition will make them change their minds. Story 25. This has been known for several election cycles. Tulsi Gabbard is a known Russian asset, as is Donald Trump. However, right-wing media wants to use the Obi-Wan Kenobi trick. Story 26. At this point, there is little difference between Russia or the Republican Party taking over. The fact that the top of the pyramid is in a different country has little effect on the outcome. Story 27. A takeover may happen many years down the road, but his plan was to dismantle and destroy America. That was his first step, and he has nearly accomplished this. I realized in 2021 we have been at war with Russia through psychological warfare on Americans. China and Iran participate as well. My opinion is we have been fighting World War III, but it has been largely digital, and the United States is losing badly, although I am starting to see a turnaround. Story 28. It is not Vladimir Putin you need to be worried about. It is Peter Thiel and his associates. Story 29. I would feel like that was nonsense, but I did like Red Dawn. Story 30. Oh, so this is hypothetical? Because it has already been happening. Story 31. Considering every policy change that this administration makes is in Vladimir Putin's best interest, I think this is plausible. Story 32. A bit surprised. He is not planning on taking over the United States. He does not want to and does not care to. He wants to break United States' global hegemony so that Russia can have its sphere of influence back and dominate its neighbors. Story 33. I would not feel good about it, but it would be just one more thing that seems to confirm I have been right about everything regarding a Donald Trump presidency so far. I do not think a takeover is what he is interested in, though. He is probably perfectly happy with the United States ruining its reputation worldwide, our government being run by dishonest people who lead it into decline and are easily manipulated, and our economy taking a downturn. This is exactly what seems to be happening now. The Cold War is finally over. Russia played the long game and won. Story 34. At a minimum, he is counting on us destroying ourselves by electing unfit leaders repeatedly, which is working out for him so far. If we continue to allow this to happen by letting these leaders do exactly what they have been doing since 2017, then that will be the final step in his plan. Story 35. They cannot even take Ukraine. Taking over the United States? It is comedy gold watching them try. Story 36. Very surprised because, outside some major cities, we all have working firearms. It is hard to take over about 300 million armed people. He knows that. Story 37. I am pretty sure those plans have been in motion since Trump's first term. Story 38. I would feel about the same as I do now, since that is what is happening. Story 39. If a Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping ticket had won the last election, it is hard to see how what they would do would be much different from the destruction of American democracy that we have seen over the last 8 months. Story 40. I do not think that Reddit's moderation or code of conduct allows me to fully express my thoughts on what I feel the appropriate solution should be if that were confirmed beyond reasonable doubt. Suffice it to say, I think in that case, the current administration and anyone associated with it should be removed from office with prejudice, and all those who continue to support them in our communities should be reviled, held in derision, and suffer the societal consequences their choices have brought upon them. I feel that way now, and I would feel the same then as well. Story 41. He is feeling a combination of angry, frustrated, and baffled at how we ever got to this point. Story 42. Not surprised in the least. He is doing a great job too, tanking the economy, deporting non-white people, government ownership of a corporation, going after enemies of the state. Next thing you know, people are falling out of buildings. Story 43. Horrible. Exactly like I do now. I feel like it would be indistinguishable from what is happening now. Story 44. I would love to see how they spin that to make it Joe Biden's fault. Story 45. Is. Story 46. I would tell many people I was right, but they would not care. Story 47. What do you mean if it turned out? It is, and I am unhappy about it. Story 48. I would laugh at how pathetic a job they are doing. Neither Vladimir Putin nor Donald Trump will be alive in 5 years. They have a long way to go. Story 49. I think many Americans have already embraced or accepted that this is a realistic possibility. Signed, a Canadian. Story 50. I am waiting for Donald Trump to bring in Russian military advisors. Story 51. We have a witch doctor as Secretary of Health and Human Services, a boxing promoter as Secretary of the Department of Energy, and a junior National Guard officer as Secretary of Defense, so all our enemies must be very happy. Story 52. Trump supporters do not care at all. Trump has always been effectively aligned with Vladimir Putin for whatever reason. It might not be dirt. Trump is determined to attack Canada and Greenland, and an endless major war in Europe threatening the North Atlantic. Treaty organization is a wet dream for that goal, which he seriously pursues. That does not bother them either. Did I mention Trump repudiated Article 5 in advance when running? His other actions make that clear, no matter what lip service is said by other officials. Even these people can figure out only around 1% of fentanyl is Canadian border-related, making that a bad faith argument for tariffs. They might have heard Trump on television literally undermining that claim by instead saying tariffs were to weaken Canadian resistance to annexation. They will give him good faith tomorrow as if none of this ever happened because they are immature. Most humans are. Low information, lazy, and careless voters brought us literally the entirety of World War II. America is not special. We fall just like other countries to even crude but omnipresent propaganda. Story 53. We passed that 9 exits ago. There is a Stuckey's up ahead. I need to pee. Story 54. Americans will not care if it does not affect them personally. Story 55. I like Vladimir Putin, but on patriotic principle I would remove him. That is the rule before a hate-driven war. When people could exchange Christmas gifts on the front lines and still shoot each other the next day, there is no reason to hate or use dehumanizing memes against the enemy. You do what you have to do. If a foreigner tries to conquer your homeland, you fight them fiercely. Then you give them a respectful burial. Story 56. Appreciate the laugh out loud this afternoon. Russia cannot even take over their smaller, weaker next-door neighbor over a land border. Why would anyone seriously consider the possibility of them crossing an ocean to take over a bigger, stronger country with the most powerful military in human history, backed up by hundreds of millions of privately owned firearms? Story 57. There is no doubt that Russia and the United States have been plotting to conquer each other since World War II. Story 58. Joke's on him. Bad Orange Man does not have any friends, at least judging by the way he treats everyone he has ever met. Story 59. I do not know. Benjamin Netanyahu might resent Vladimir Putin trying to take it away from him. Story 60. He does not want to take us over. He wants to destroy us and replace us with Mother Russia. Story 61. What are you talking about? That already happened in 2016. Story 62. Plotting? Russia has been waging an information war for decades now, and they are outperforming us. Takeover? Probably not necessary. They will just let us fumble and self-implode. Story 63. He does not want to take over. He just wants us to ignore him. The same applies to China. They do not care about the United States except where it concerns foreign affairs. Their main interest is our technology and for us to be silent about freedom. Story 64. I am sure it is in progress with their favorite asset Donnie. Story 65. Thought that was the case already with Putin's supporter as president. Story 66. I would not like it, but he cannot even take Ukraine using his military, so even if he wanted to, he could not do much. The President of the United States and the President of Russia should be on friendly terms. The rivalry is pointless and largely exists to further the goals of the military-industrial complex. Vladimir Putin wanted to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and be in a peaceful alliance with Europe as well. Story 67. I do not think it is the friendship of this administrator. I think he is showing them all of the evidence he has on Donald Trump and is telling them what to do. Just to show he is serious, he will, let us say, damage a United States factory in Ukraine. I would not even doubt if he told them in Alaska that he killed Jeffrey Epstein and provided them with information on how he did it. They just need to keep Donald Trump in charge at any cost or he will go after them. Story 68. I would be more surprised if that had not been the plan at some point. Story 69. Reading this just gave me a thought. If nothing stops your current government's plans, there will soon be many very desperate people in the United States with no healthcare, no jobs, and no social security. They would be ideal cannon fodder to help facilitate all sorts of plans. Story 70. Probably the same way I would feel if President Donald Trump suddenly opened the borders and started letting undocumented immigrants flood in. Story 71. Laugh because Ukraine is demonstrating its full military strength right now. Story 72. We should start renaming states and cities with Russian names. Make Russian the official language. Wear fur hats and play the balalaika. The White House looks kind of boring. Spruce it up with some onion domes. Better Russian than a Democrat. Haha. Story 73. And yet, Vladimir Putin annexed Crimea during Barack Obama's administration and launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine during Joe Biden's administration. Story 74. Vindicated. I have been trying to get people to realize he is dishonest for years now. Story 75. I would not be surprised at all. It is quite clear that Donald Trump is a Russian agent. Story 76. If, laugh out loud, Donald Trump is already the president, how many postponements to Russian sanctions do you need to be convinced? Story 77. Friendship? You mean decades of blackmail over Donald J. Trump's head. Story 78. At this point, there is little difference between Russia or the Republican Party taking over. The fact that the top of the pyramid is in a different country has little effect on the outcome. Story 79. Did you not see Donald Trump wagging his tail like a puppy looking at Vladimir Putin walk down the red carpet? Story 80. Putin does not want to take over the United States. He just wants to create chaos so that he and his country can benefit from it. The Soviet Union was a destructive force and a source of disinformation, sabotage, and general disruption during the Cold War. They could also keep secret how badly they were running the place. When things fell apart, the chaos became evident, as did the kleptocracy and the exploitation by the most corrupt people from the West. What is left is a failed state with no real domestic culture of civil society, democracy, or open discourse. Putin and their 1% like this just fine for themselves, and the way to preserve it is by ruining the rest of our society. Story 81. As far as I am concerned, the majority of voters knowingly voted for it. Therefore, I consider that in all my calculations. Story 82. He does not need to take over the country. He just needs the country to stay out of his way in Europe. Story 83. Putin invaded Alaska. Donald Trump said he would give him 2 weeks to withdraw or face sanctions. After 2 weeks, he extended the deadline by another 2 weeks. Story 84. What do you mean if? Realistically, Putin is just a figurehead, same as Trump. However, Putin is closer to or friendlier to the people really pulling the strings. Who are those people? If Trump is a Russian asset due to needing money after going bankrupt in the United States, that would be the moment to aim at. Both of them are in the pocket of financiers who may be a singular entity like an organized crime unit or a collection of people at the top of groups like the Heritage Foundation and similar organizations. If your proposal came to pass, I would not be shocked about Trump being duped into handing over the United States. However, I would be very upset and angry over this because, as an American, we did this to ourselves. As for anything after that moment, I have no idea. I imagine the country collapses and enters civil war, creating 2 to 3, maybe 4 to 5 different countries in the former United States. Story 85. The person acts as if it is a hypothetical situation instead of current reality. Story 86. Is that not what is happening right now? If not, what a wildly successful coincidence for him. Story 87. He would be long dead by the time any such ridiculous thing ever happened. Story 88. Why take over the smoldering mess we are creating? Story 89. I would not be surprised. I am going to laugh at my Republican coworkers for putting a Russian agent in office. Granted, half of them think Vladimir Putin is impressive, so they might actually like the idea. Story 90. This boys and girls is called a push-pull, also known as automated misinformation. Story 91. This is a very flawed theory. If you replaced Vladimir Putin with Benjamin Netanyahu, you might have a point. It is amazing what some people will believe. You have Trump derangement syndrome. Story 92. This scenario is hypothetical, but it seems like Vladimir Putin is taking advantage of Donald Trump's administration for Russian benefit right now. Story 93. He is not, and he does not need or want to be. He needs us to be unstable so he can reclaim the territories of the Soviet Union and exploit the Middle East and Africa without competition. Story 94. I do not know. How would you feel if undeniable evidence emerged that the 2020 election was truly stolen by the Democratic Party? Story 95. If they named his price, Diaper Don would hand them the keys and walk away with no questions asked. Story 96. On one hand, vindicated. On the other hand, hopeless if we cannot do anything about that. Story 97. I think you mean controlling the presidency and the Republican Party in the House. Story 98. Mate, we already know this, and we are very sad and angry about it. Story 99. The same as I do now, because that is already the most reasonable explanation for the Trump supporters' actions. Story 100. I mean, aren't we a vassal state of Russia at this point? Our president is fully compromised. Story 101. There is no question that Vladimir Putin wants to sow chaos and see us tear ourselves apart. He has found plenty of useful idiots, including Donald Trump, who are willing to help him. As for a direct takeover, Vladimir Putin does not have the resources, but the Chinese government does. Story 102. When Donald Trump won in 2016, I was very depressed. I started a new job and told my manager I was feeling down because of the election. He said, "At least we are not going to war with Russia." To which I responded, "No, because Vladimir Putin already won." Story 103. Plotting? That happened years ago. He is fully pulling all the strings, and his puppet is doing all the dancing for him. The United States of America is finished. Story 104. He is plotting this? Don't you mean he has successfully got his candidate in office, and only our fragile institutions are preventing a full-on dictatorship? Story 105. Not possible. He could not even tame Afghanistan, a country with the population of California. Try to do that with the entire United States of America, then add the Second Amendment, and I do not think so. Story 106. The Clintons literally sold all of our uranium to Russia to line their own pockets, but the other president is bad. Story 107. How would you feel if Apple and Google conspired to dominate the smartphone market? That is how we feel. Story 108. Putin's goal, and the long-established goal of Russia since before President John F. Kennedy, was not to take over but to cripple the United States so that it is ineffective in standing in their way. That is all, and they have effectively won thanks to their compromising material boy, Donald Trump and company. Story 109. Never would have guessed Russia would win the Cold War, and this fast. That's the most surprising part. I guess it helps when you have video proof of the President of the United States having sex with children. Story 110. Do not think he wants to take over the United States. He would rather see us spiral into lawlessness and then acquire his stake in all United States companies. Story 111. Their war on progressives will turn the United States of America into a place controlled by Putin. They will not be favored. Story 112. I mean, would it be the worst thing that happened in the United States of America this year? I am not sure it would even make it to the top 3. Story 113. Exactly how I feel right now because that is what is happening. Story 114. I am assuming Red Dawn would happen, but the opposition would probably welcome communism. Story 115. Not at all shocking, he has been in Vladimir Putin's pocket for decades. I am pretty sure the dirt he has on him at this point is that he actually lost in all 3 elections. At this point, with how hard he has tried to make Jeffrey Epstein go away and how much his base does not care about it, I do not think the purported videos are enough to blackmail him anymore. The only other thing they could hold over him is that he is so in debt he is actually broke. But that would be insane considering how much in taxpayer dollars he receives now, plus him wringing his base for every penny at any opportunity. Story 116. The idea that Russia or Vladimir Putin would ever take over the United States of America is preposterous. The idea that he is and has been reaping unimaginable benefits, both strengthening Russia and himself, and weakening both the United States and all Western nations, is rather obvious. The United States has been divided, the economy severely damaged, institutions such as the free press, education, research and academia, healthcare, and more have been wrecked and dismantled. At the same time, alliances that have been absolutely essential to the success of NATO nations, particularly the United States and Europe since the end of World War II, have been ruined, perhaps permanently. Sanctions have been removed, Ukraine betrayed, and the list goes on. He does not have to take over. They just had to help get the most unqualified, ignorant, and incompetent multi-felon elected twice. That alone has been the most successful move Russia has ever made, and it is not even close. Story 117. It would not surprise me at all, but we have the most ignorant and egotistical president we have ever had. Story 118. Nice work, Sherlock. Now tell us something we did not already know. Story 119. Friendship? Not sure you understand how diplomacy works. You cannot always bomb your way to peace. Sometimes you have to plug your nose and smile for the cameras. For reference, see Roosevelt and Stalin. Story 120. I once asked Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer how the President of the United States would behave if he was compromised by Russia. I regret ever asking that. Story 121. It could not be more obvious that this is exactly what is happening. Story 122. We are the slow-boiling frog. For the past 10 years, the water has been increasing gradually. Story 123. Honestly, I would be more shocked if people did not suspect shady influence at that point. It would feel like a total betrayal of trust. Story 124. I think that ship has sailed. I feel disgusted and angry. Story 125. What do you mean? He has been doing this for decades. It is no secret that Russia plans to destabilize the United States, and the government is clearly compromised in pockets all the way up to the top. Story 126. Maybe he could finish straightening this warped society. Story 127. Honestly, I would not care. Visa-free travel to Russia would have been helpful a few years ago, but I obtained dual citizenship elsewhere to achieve that. Story 128. It's been happening since Khrushchev. Take a few minutes and watch this former Soviet security agency agent who defected. He isn't completely correct, but he is mostly accurate. It is frightening how close this person is. Story 129. If the Grand Old Party was infiltrated long ago, it has been well documented that several Grand Old Party members visited Moscow on the 4th of July several years ago. Furthermore, Russia has admitted several times that they have been involved with the Grand Old Party. Turns out that Russiagate was not a hoax after all. Who would have thought? Story 130. One of these days I will understand why people are so obsessed with the idea of Americans going this route due to some outside enemy influence. This is what they have always been. This is what American exceptionalism always was. This is Pax Americana at home. Story 131. Sit down and smoke some bowls. Put up my house for rent in Southern California. Buy property in Cozumel, Mexico. Story 132. What do you mean by plotting? Have you never heard of the Soviet plan to topple capitalist democracy? Because we are acting it out currently, whether he is involved or not. Story 133. Mad I didn't have a hat that said Pelosi was right about everything. Story 134. That people do not think this is exactly what is happening is amazing to me. Story 135. Make America Great Again would start ordering Russian dictionaries. This is what I voted for. Couldn't be happier. Story 136. That's ridiculous. Putin just wants to crash or break up the United States. Why would he want to take it over? Story 137. I mean, the obvious Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. and China relationship could not dethrone the United States. Am I supposed to be more worried about Russia than China now? Story 138. Why do you think they met in Alaska? Why do you think Melania dug up the Rose Garden? When Donald is finished and we try to resist, they will activate the Havana Syndrome machine. Donald does not care about the United States. He only wants money. Story 139. The takeover happened years ago. As the joke goes, and then it got worse. Story 140. I would feel some discomfort but would not panic because that effort would certainly fail. Story 141. It's not like he held up a photo of him and Vladimir Putin during a sports press conference. Story 142. I'd say, I told you, Dad. He hates Donald Trump as much as I do. I just don't know if he understands how compromised and legitimately dangerous he is. The poor man still has too much faith left in this country. Story 143. Half of us would love it. The other half have intelligence quotients over 100 but do not own guns or courage. Story 144. Well then, charge Donald Trump with a crime and get rid of him. You have accused him of everything, so it should not be that hard to do. At the very least, you could keep him so busy that he would not be able to do much else. I do not know how President Joe Biden feels about Vladimir Putin. Story 145. Consider the associations with Russia that have come to light in the Republican Party over the last decade. Senators and high-level Republicans traveled to Moscow on the 4th of July, the attempted Ukrainian coup outlined in the Mueller report, the National Rifle Association being infiltrated and guided at the highest levels by Russian intelligence agents, and the destabilization of American society through online propaganda. There was ample coverage, yet they aligned with him. Now we are in the discovery stage of this issue. Will we revert to authoritarianism, or will the populace organize against it? The outcome will become clear over the next few years. After 250 years, the original and largest democratic social experiment in history may be in its final chapter. Story 146. With what exactly? His ineffective military that cannot take over a bowl of jello? Story 147. I would have to look for clues, such as Donald Trump trusting Vladimir Putin more than the United States, and treating Vladimir Putin much better than our allies. Story 148. I would be shocked, I tell you, shocked. Well, not that shocked. Story 149. I thought this had been the plan all along. That is what many of us are expecting and terrified about. Story 150. That seems like what he is doing. When is cancer going to kill these people? Story 151. What do you mean? That is exactly what he and his associate Donald Trump are doing. Story 152. You do know we have more firearms than people here, do you not? Story 153. You mean how do I feel? That would be the question to ask. Not good is the answer. Story 154. 1. This is not an if. 2. Stating how I feel about it and what I believe the solution to be will get me removed from the platform. Let me just say that I am a big fan of the Maquis, both from French history and Star Trek. Eddington did nothing wrong. Story 155. Oh, that is clearly the plot. He and his whole team are connected to Russia. Story 156. They could not take over Ukraine, which shares a border with them. Ukraine is much smaller in size compared to the United States and is full of determined people. I find the idea you are presenting amusing. Story 157. I would not be surprised. I do not think Russia has any chance of succeeding, but Vladimir Putin might believe he could. Story 158. Oh God. Oh no, what if Vladimir Putin was secretly taking over America through Donald Trump? You are woefully uninformed. Joe Biden let Vladimir Putin do whatever he pleased. He invaded Ukraine, and there was no significant response from the left. Donald Trump is navigating complex international situations to try to stop the needless killing, and some on the left criticize him for this. I wish Democrats would be intellectually consistent. Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, lack of action on Russian aggression, his open border policies, and spending trillions on unnecessary programs show poor leadership. Biden's Department of Health and Human Services sent out drug paraphernalia kits. America was so lost under his ineffective, incompetent presidency that it is remarkable we are still functioning. Let's go, Brandon. Story 159. Based on the response Americans are having so far to the takeover, I do not think anyone cares at all. Story 160. He said a long time ago that he would take down the United States of America without firing a shot. Story 161. He already has. The United States is a subordinate state of the Russian Federation now. Story 162. Ownership in the headline should be corrected to ownership. Story 163. How would I feel? I suppose I would find it hysterical. Here's the thing. If the person ruling over you is a tyrant, do you really care if they are from here or from there? Natural born or not? American or Russian? I mean, does it really matter if they are mistreating you? I am an anarchist. I see no legitimacy in governments as they are. Everything we learned in school, all the voting, all the arguing over politics that goes on, just to have Russia take over the hierarchy here and rule from there, and people flipping out over it. I'm sorry, maybe I'm wrong, but I would find it very comical. Who knows, maybe we can toss the whole idea of democracy under the category of sounds good but is actually foolish. Story 164. Well, it is pretty obvious it is happening right now. The answer is nothing. Story 165. What kind of question is this? What if your country was taken over? Laugh out loud. Get out of here. Story 166. I would ask myself, if Donald Trump were a Russian asset, what would he do differently? Everything he is doing right now aligns perfectly with being an asset. Story 167. Honestly, at this point I cannot find the energy to care. Story 168. Hopefully, the Reddit users feel the same way about the current invasion that has been increasing for a decade. Story 169. To be fair, it would be halfway surprising and halfway not, because while yes, they did not win the immediate aspects of the Cold War, especially after having their officials replaced midway through and losing their sphere of influence, that does not mean they did not win the long-term effects, such as the permanent mark on Americans thinking that their government is perfect, or the scar of people not doing research because they believe a party representative is just a banner or a few words. They did not exactly manage to win, but they did not lose either. Although nobody ever really wins in war, politicians press buttons and give orders, but think about the hundreds and thousands of people who died on either side, even in Cold Wars. Story 170. I would feel betrayed, not surprised. I would ask myself if there is anything my family and I could or should have done. Should we have united to fight against any kind of takeover despite our differences? Democrat versus Republican. Wolverines. Story 171. Despite everything, I do not think he could, no matter how much help he had. Even if Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin conspired, the citizens would never stand for it. Story 172. Nobody would care or lift a finger, just like now with Donald Trump. Story 173. I would be more surprised if red hats let go of their ankles and grabbed their guns. Story 174. Who cares if it's him or Donald Trump? We are all prisoners to the rich. Story 175. I would not doubt it if that is legitimately his end goal. The best way to destroy an empire is from the inside. Story 176. If Vladimir Putin really wanted America, he would just buy TikTok and Chick-fil-A. Story 177. If it turns out that way, we will not become Russia, at least on paper or anything like that, but we could be or are under their control to some degree. Story 178. Donald Trump is taking over already. Therefore, there is no need for Vladimir Putin to be directly involved. Story 179. I am confident that the Russians developed a 40-year plan in the 1980s to undermine America from within. It appears they succeeded. Story 180. It has already happened. I have seen many presidents, but never one with such admiration for Russia's leader. Story 181. I would feel like I do now because that seems like what is starting to happen. Story 182. Unfortunately, that is not really a hypothetical question right now. That appears to be what is happening. Russia has always wanted world domination. Story 183. More likely, he wants to take over all the countries that used to be part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and former President Donald Trump will just let him. Story 184. Is that supposed to be a revelation? I thought we knew that already. The Republican Party admitted it last time and then had to backtrack. Story 185. The people pretending that the question was about invading when they cannot take Ukraine are trolls or being obtuse. The question is obviously proposing that the takeover would be from the inside, and since they have a puppet here and not in Ukraine, that would be the difference. They would not have to fight here. Trump would comply for them and insist we have always been Russia, and his supporters would threaten anyone who disagreed. Story 186. Could not conquer Ukraine. Let us try the greatest world power this planet has ever known. Story 187. You mean he is not already undermining the United States for this sort of thing? Story 188. Putin does not want the United States. If we were all brain dead, Donald Trump supporters would. Story 189. Not shocked in the least, but it would be fun to see them scrambling to blame everyone else. Story 190. Not worried. They have always tried, and so has the United States, which has been even more successful in overthrowing governments. The United States is the stronger nation. Story 191. That is exactly what is happening. Members of the Republican Party are ecstatic. This is the world they want. Story 192. Confused. How could a country with a smaller gross domestic product than Texas even affect our country? Story 193. Wolverines. I'm down. I have difficult challenges ahead. Enemies, both foreign and domestic. Story 194. All of America's enemies have to do is stand back and watch us destroy ourselves. We are almost there. There is no need for invasions, military action, or malicious acts of hacking. From the top down and from the bottom up, America is defeated. Story 195. It would not surprise me at all. I am not learning Russian, though. Story 196. I am not allowed to discuss my feelings towards this topic on Reddit. Story 197. It would feel like a plot we have all known about for years. Story 198. You are pathetic if you are reading and believing this comment thread. Story 199. You mean the country that cannot even take over Ukraine? That is laughable. Story 200. 48% of voters would not care as long as they hold racist beliefs. Story 201. 25% of our country voted for the president and would support him. I am convinced that nothing can persuade them that he does not care about the country. It is truly a cult. Story 202. I would laugh seeing as that has been a leftist lie for over a decade at this point. Story 203. Turned out, this is what it actually is. How do I feel? Angry. Story 204. I could ask my dog, but also you. What is it like having a peanut brain? Story 205. Angry because it is true? Why are we asking a question about what is happening right in front of us? Story 206. Sure, I have known this since I found out Vladimir Putin exists. It has been validated even. Probably other things are less pleasant, too. Story 207. It would feel exactly like it does right now, as that is exactly what is happening. Story 208. I believe this is exactly what is happening, but not because of friendship. I believe there are pictures, recordings, and documents that Vladimir Putin has on Donald Trump that would definitely ruin him in many ways. Story 209. 400 million weapons are in private hands, and the military is composed of people the political left does not support. Story 210. Brother, the United States is literally being taken over without a shot fired. All these people crying they need their guns to stand against tyranny, but everyone's got work on Monday, so nobody takes action. Stop looking at Vladimir Putin. Look at Donald Trump. He engages in inappropriate behavior with minors. Story 211. Original poster. Does that mean you do not think he is? Looking at Donald Trump's actions, I am surprised he has not gifted Alaska to Vladimir Putin at this point. I believe Donald Trump is a Russian agent. Story 212. I would feel that this season's writer needs to be taken out back and shot for overusing tired tropes. Story 213. Liberal here. Consider me convinced. Now, can he be impeached and get us out of this timeline? Story 214. I would be stunned if this is not the plan with Agent Krasnov. Story 215. Not at all surprised. It is still bizarre to me that the grand old party and conservatives went from being anti-foreign and anti-Russian to supporting Russia because of an individual with an orange face. Story 216. I do not believe there is much friendship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. There is only mutual respect. If there were a friendship, we would not be sending more weapons to Ukraine. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.